Welcome to Whispers to a Bride, where we talk about the stuff no one else is talking about. We are going deep on the emotional aspects of getting married, the stress, drama, and turbulence that affects your own sense of identity and your closest relationships. We are talking about what it means to be a bride and how to navigate this sacred time with more grace and ease. I'm your host, Kara Gassabay. As a life coach and therapist, I'm going to be sharing super practical tips so that you can not only rise to the occasion of your wedding, but also your life. Hello, and welcome back to Whispers to a Bride. I am your host, Kara Gassabay, and this is episode 70, The Subtle Shift. I am coming at you this morning fresh off of doing a wedding. I am a wedding officiant, for those of you who do not know, in addition to being a bridal coach. And it's just the best experience ever to work with a couple, get to know them, help them write and create a meaningful, beautiful ceremony, and then be there with them on the day for the big moment. It's like a little triangle of trust, like the three of us right up there for that really special moment. So anyway, it always just like really re-inspires me and reinvigorates me. And I don't know, I'm just really into it. And this wedding was just really, really beautiful and very sweet couple. I always get like the best couples. It's just very, very cool how that sort of works out. But that is what I am sort of basking in, that glow, that after wedding glow. That's just so fun. But today I really kind of wanted to bring it back to basics and get back to that, like, why am I in this business? Why is this my job? Why am I a bridal coach? Like, what is going on? How did we get here? There's so many different little topics going on, but the fundamental, the big one, the real major thing that my work is premised on, and also my clients' biggest problem, is I call it the subtle shift. It's all about that shift that happens in our relationships when we get engaged and start the wedding planning process. And it's kind of this invisible unfolding that goes on once you go through that proposal experience. And in my book, I talk about that sort of idea and that metaphor of the rock going on your finger. And that is such a great way to think of it, because it's like once you move that rock, the terrain, the landscape around you is forever altered, right? It's different. The well-worn paths of your relationships are now different. Right? You have to reroute yourself. You have to reconsider things. You have to relearn and redecide your inner landscape and your closest relationships. And I think that this is the part that no one tells you about. No one explains that getting engaged is so exciting and wonderful, but it also is going to cause a whole ripple effect in your life. And that has people experiencing all kinds of feelings and discomfort that they didn't expect. And when they feel that, then they get panicked and then they get confused. And so then they try to override, right? And then it just becomes like, we're just going to go crazy about the wedding, and we're just going to like funnel all of our weird feelings into like crazy wedding planning things, instead of really sort of leaning into and unpacking and figuring out, okay, what's really going on? What am I thinking about? What am I worried about? What did I never plan on? What are these feelings that like I can't figure out, right? All that interpersonal stuff, I'm telling you, it just gets like jammed into wedding planning. And that's why wedding planning becomes this big, dramatic, overwhelming thing, because it's never just about the wedding planning. It's about the subtle shift that is happening in our relationships with our family, our friends, and our fiance. That is where I come in. That is why clients, smart clients, jump on my calendar, right? In addition to hiring the wedding planner or eloping or doing whatever they're going to do to handle the wedding part, because I'm not saying that's not a big thing. It's a big thing for sure. But the ones that really get like, hold on, there's something else at play. There's something else going on here. And that is with my relationships. And that is why you'd want to talk to someone like me who is solely focused on you and your relationships. Like that is who I am at my core, is a relationship sort of coach, therapist. And that is sort of what brought me to this work. And I just love doing it during this really intense season of life. One of the ways that I like to think about it too with the engagement, it's such an exciting time, right? It's like fireworks and it's beautiful and it's like catches your attention. But also at the same time, it's still quite disruptive, right? Like even fireworks, like they're lovely, but like, woo, they can catch you off guard. They can like get your heart beating fast. Like it's a joyful rumble, but a disruptive one at the same time. It'll jostle you, it'll unsettle you. And that's just the truth of it. And acknowledging and knowing that is just going to help you so, so much as you navigate this time. And again, I'll have other episodes where I sort of dive into each one of these areas on their own because obviously they each need their own section, but I just wanted to sort of give you a high level sort of view about what you can sort of expect and what I'm talking about with this subtle shift. Number one, it's going to shift your experience of yourself. It is going to change your relationship with yourself, how you think about yourself. And one of the big things that happens is that whole idea of like when I grow up, right? That has always been sort of out in front of you. Getting engaged sort of like puts that into the now. It's like one huge factor in the when I grow up, my life will be like this. Big part of that is who you marry. And when all of a sudden that's locked into place, it like erases a bunch of options. It finalizes a bunch of like things that had been question marks. Maybe I'd move here one day or I'd do this or have this kind of lifestyle. Well, now that you've got your person, a lot of that stuff is now locked in a very real way, which can require an adjustment, let's say.
And so once you've adjusted to like what your life is sort of now looking like, that you're engaged and planning this big next chapter, you got to figure out your relationship to that life. And it starts with the basic things like, what's your name going to be? And that's a whole thing. I have a whole episode on that. Talk about like, if it feels like an identity crisis, that's because it is. Your identity is changing, especially as a woman. That is why I focus on the female experience of getting married. It's going to bring you into a new relationship with like your doubts. How do you make a big decision like this? For so many women, this is the biggest decision they've made to this point that's going to impact them for years to come. And so how do you handle like the feelings of doubt and how do you understand like what's a red flag and what's just like a healthy discernment and all of that stuff? It's going to suddenly bring into the forefront ideas about motherhood and career, because trust and believe, even if you want to take it step by step and think about first this, then this, everyone around you is going to come with those questions. And so it's going to be right in your face. Again, a big identity thing. Well, if you're going to be a wife, then are you going to be a mother? And if you're going to be a mother, are you going to work? And if you're like all the things start coming fast and furious once you get that ring on. And then just how do you relate with people, right? Now that your circle is expanding and involving this fiance and their family, then you have to change and relook at your patterns of like, okay, if you've always been someone who's like a people pleaser with your mother, now what happens when your mother is at odds with your fiance or your future mother-in-law and what she wants, or, you know, all the different scenarios. Your ideas of perfectionism can really be awakened and have to be wrestled with and grappled with in planning a wedding, because it's one of those things that we so often have exported so much of our identity. Well, on my wedding day, I'll look like this, I'll buy this kind of dress, I'll have this kind of venue. So when the reality comes of putting those sort of dreams and fairy tales and ideas into real life, it can get really complicated and it can really throw a lot of people for a loop when their anxiety is sort of channeled through that perfectionism. And obviously your relationship with your body, huge. When you have all those people looking at you when you're buying one of the most expensive dresses probably you'll ever buy in your life, which also has a lot to do with fashion, identity, how you present yourself. Who are you on this day? What does that mean in a bigger context? You could write a whole paper on the wedding dress, and I have a whole episode on that. And then your spirituality and religion, right? When you are planning the ceremony, I was just talking about doing a ceremony. That was a very big sort of moment for me, a shift in like, okay, I was raised Catholic. I went to the Catholic school. I did that whole thing, but that doesn't feel right anymore. And now my wedding ceremony feels like a real important time to bring some mindfulness and intention around like, well, what do I want going forward? And is your wedding a love letter to the past, or is it a love letter to the future? It can be either. There's no right or wrong. I'm just saying it's going to come up. And then your relationship with money, of course, the weddings are very expensive. And how do you deal with all of that? And then another one is that I love is just your relationship with receiving. Can you handle and take in all the love that's coming at you, all the support? How are you able to like metabolize that and take it all in and not keep it at an arm's length because you've got your own sort of worthiness roadblocks? There's so many things. And that's just your relationship with yourself. Don't forget the subtle shift happening with your parents. They are going through a whole thing. And I've got episodes on that and I will have more. But just at the bigger level, you getting married marks a big sort of chapter closing in their book. It's the end sort of that childhood when you're handed off to another person that becomes your next of kin, right? Like, I'm not saying your parents go away or anything, but we all recognize there's like a difference, right? When you are married, the first call in an emergency, maybe it used to be your mom or dad. Now it's your partner, the person you've chosen to marry. And that's just a subtle but very profound shift. And again, your parents are going to be going through their own identity crisis, having, okay, now we have kids who are married, and then maybe there are grandchildren on the horizon, and maybe the childhood home is going to be sold, and just so many things go on around this time with your parents. Maybe they're worried about what's their relationship going to be like with you as an adult. Maybe they want it to be the same as it was when you were a kid. Maybe they want it to be really different. Maybe they have no idea and they're just nervous and scared and unsure. Again, all of that sometimes gets like jammed into like weird wedding fights when really it's about processing just this emotion of the shift. Things are changing and we don't know what to think. And we just need a moment to air it out, let the emotions come through and try to make a little sense of them, and then just be thoughtful, have some of those conversations that need to be had, but are just so easy to avoid because we've got the big wedding. Like, well, just focus on the wedding because that's really the thing. That's never the thing. The thing is what's going on underneath that wedding planning. The other subtle shift that's happening is with your siblings, right? Do they like the person you're marrying? Do they have feelings about it? Are they afraid of being displaced in terms of like their connection and closeness and bond with you? It can go a lot of ways. Obviously, getting married can bring you closer to your siblings. I talk about that in my book. But no matter which direction or the texture and nature of the change, it's still a shift. And you got to be ready for that. And then finally, your closest friends. They can be so happy for you. They can be so supportive. They could be completely neglectful. Like the craziest things happen with friendships around weddings. I cannot tell you how many women jump on my calendar to talk about this because they do not see it coming. They are hoping that their friendships are at their strongest, most fun, supportive sort of chapter because they just want to be celebrating and popping the champagne and doing the bachelorette trips and dress shopping and shower planning and all the things. But a lot can be going on under the surface. Sometimes your friend getting engaged weirdly like has an emotional unhooking where they're like, okay, she has her person now. And they just are feeling like less responsible to be your emotional partner in navigating life. And they didn't realize that they were doing it out of obligation until the opportunity arose to like unhook. And that can be really jarring. Other people could be just having full on like insecurity and jealousy about their own love life that they're like, I got to put some distance between me and this wedding planning because it's just making me feel all kinds of things I don't want to feel. Again, I'm not saying anything is like right or wrong, but it's good to recognize why and not personalize it. I think a lot of times what I see with my brides is people taking it very personal and keeping score. Well, I did this for her wedding and I did this for and everybody owes me and I deserve this and all of those things, which I'm not saying they're not true, but I think it is going to help so much if you have this framework of the subtle shift, realizing, oh, it's completely normal to be feeling all of this jostling and all this tumult in my close relationships. even though I don't want that, even though it's completely inconvenient timing and I barely have the bandwidth to handle it, just knowing that it's expected and normal and okay, I think can take a lot of the anxiety out, right? Just naming a problem sometimes is half the solution, because we let each other off the hook sometimes with the truth when we can just say, hey, look, maybe this wedding chapter is going to be hard for you. You could say that to your best friend because you know she's going through a divorce or a breakup or just having trouble in her own love life. Like if you just say it, that can give her the space and the grace to like walk this chapter with you acknowledging that it's hard for her. Sometimes that's all we need, is just to be seen. That's all our people need. Acknowledging to your parents, like, hey, this is a change. We're kind of walking through it together. Like, I might be weirdly emotional. You might be like, let's just try to make a pact that like, we're going to give each other the opportunity to make mistakes, have weird emotional outbursts, get confused, say things we don't mean, but that we're going to work through it, because we all know it's shaky ground, right? What did we talk about? When you get the rock, you change the terrain. The earth is no longer the same, right? The landscape looks different. So that means we have to navigate each other a little differently. And all of that requires is intention, mindfulness, gentleness, a willingness to let each other fail and to have those hard conversations. So I don't want to go on forever, even though I could, because this is like the crux of it. But I just want to tell you today, expect a subtle shift. Just expect it and understand that like getting married is a change, and change is so wonderful and so exciting, but it's also hard no matter what. The change that you Pinterest for and you prayed for is still a change, and it's still going to be bumpy and tricky and have some unexpected twists and turns, but it's okay. If you expect it, I'm telling you, that takes so much of the sting out of it. So if you are experiencing any of the annoying parts of the subtle shift, get support. This is the entire point, is that this stuff requires support and insight and feedback and strategy sometimes to navigate it with more grace and ease, which is what I can help deliver to you. And here's the thing. Here's the secret. You have the answers. You have the insight. Our hour together is the space to hear and get clear on your own insights and your own best right next steps. But we don't give ourselves the time and the space to hear our own inner voice, our own genius, creative response to tough situations. And that keeps us stuck in like the spiraling loop. So I am begging you to give yourself that 1 hour conversation to hear your own voice. Hear what you need to know about how to navigate this chapter. And I am just your thought partner and your heart partner in hearing yourself and figuring that out and how to put that into action. So jump on over to KaraMaureen.com, make your appointment today. And in the meantime, I will see you in all the socials. I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram, and I love hearing from you. Rate and review this podcast if you can. You guys are so sweet about sending me DM, like beautiful glowing reviews. And I love that. I love, love, love it. But also if you put it on the review section of Apple, that will help this reach other brides, because that's what we're doing. We're helping each other. This is like the divine feminine rising together for the bridal moment, because it is like the fun, most beautiful, exciting one. And we deserve each other and we need each other. Okay. Love you so much. Till next time, wishing you nothing but bridal bliss.